How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to Legion's Lounge. I'm your producer, Matt Waller, and I'm joined by your host, Taylor. How's it going tonight?
It's great to be back. I know we had a lull in the last week, and but because for us Canadians, it was Family Day weekend, so we didn't really get a chance to do any recording. It was a busy holiday for everybody, so it's great to be back and another podcast in and early your typical Monday morning release. So, but we got another special guest with us today.
We got Kevin with us today. Kevin, how you doing tonight? I
I'm
guess
not
it's
too bad.
morning.
How are you?
I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah,
So,
so Kevin's a brand new player into our community. By brand new, I mean like only a couple weeks now, I think. You know, I think stumbling across us, through the original Kickstarter, I believe, maybe.
No, actually, it was through Nerds Cafe's website.
Oh,
oh,
okay.
really nice. Okay. So, have you
Yeah,
always been a TCG player, or is this like your first TCG?
this is my first. I played Pokemon for a little bit,
Mhm.
but this is my first actual TCG. I was always interested in Magic when it
Mhm.
first came out, but I did not know anyone that played it. And then I started playing Pokemon with my son,
Mhm.
and then I started looking for places nearby where I could go to play. And then I saw Legion, no, on Nerd Cafe's website, and then
Mhm.
I started checking into it. And I watched that was actually just before the tournament at Nerds Cafe on that weekend. And I
Oh,
watched
okay,
some
okay.
videos of people playing live, and then just got really interested in it.
Yeah, no, it's an amazing game. So which Legion have you started gravitating towards as you started the game?
Well, I was interested originally in the Undead, and then I
Mm-hmm.
started looking. So I bought the battle box for the Undead and Titans, and I started looking at Titans. I got really interested in that, and so I've been playing them for a while now.
Titans are super fun. I've never really gotten fully around to building them yet, but in theory they seem super fun. Like I've
Well, I know we managed to get early on. Um, managed to connect. You joined the Discord server pretty early, and you jumped in. You and I had a personal conversation, Kevin, I believe, and we
Yeah,
set up a time to meet at Nerds,
yeah,
and for me to walk you through the game and teach you the decks that you were interested in. I believe we did a run through with the undead at that time.
yeah. That's correct.
So what did
Yeah,
how'd you feel about just the early right from the very beginning, the grassroots, the sit down, learn through. What was your first impressions?
well, my first impression was it was an easy game to learn, but still complicated enough to keep you interested in it. So it wasn't too simple like Pokemon, but it wasn't too complicated like Magic, where
exactly,
a
and
person like me who has no experience can get into and still get challenged as well.
no, exactly, and I think that's something that's amazing is how it's like one of those easy to pick up, difficult to master games, right? Like I don't know, oh, that's weird. I've been playing the game for like a year now. That's weird to me. Has not felt like a year, but I'm still learning things to this day, right? So it's one of those things where it's like you pick it up, but it's you can always like you can always learn more, and it's very interesting because it's
Yeah,
difficult to master, and I have no idea when I'm going to master it, you know?
Well, and I
yeah. I
think
think.
go for it, Kevin.
Oh no, go ahead, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I think that's the challenge when it comes to different things in the design space. I don't think it gets talked about enough about the principles of design and how design affect and come into everything. And one of those things that I say is that when you really dive into the meat and potatoes of how things are built, how things are put together, there's always emphasis on flashy cards. There's always emphasis on cool high rarity pulls and chase and booster boxes and stuff. But the actual design and build of a game, it really gives you a new. Um, it makes you step back and become a student yourself, and that's what I found when I was designing this. because like exactly like Kevin said, you want to make sure that it's not too complicated where it scares off new players, but you also don't want it to be so easy that
You get bored.
the people that come into it, they're like, oh, I figured it out, it's solved, and I'm going to go back to playing my other games now, right? So you have to have enough to get them hooked, but enough to also on the other side to keep it interesting and that it can always evolve.
No, exactly. And something I feel is that like I don't know, this was my first TCG as well, and I picked up the game, I'd say relatively like early on, but and I just started trying to learn more and more. Like there's so much to learn, like so many different ways that cards combo, and it's so fun and so interesting.
I
Like,
also
so
find that, buying cards, you start to learn more and more that there's different aspects of, like, to Titan deck, there's different ways you can play it. And
Exactly.
so it gives you a little bit more complexity to the game and how you want to build your deck.
Mm-hmm. Especially with like the new set Empires coming out, like, ooh, that complexity is gonna so much. Double
well,
all
I,
the
I think
decks. Ooh.
I think you make a good point there too, Matt, is that um, now is a great time for players to enter into the game because
Mm-hmm.
our card pool is a decent size with 3 sets being out plus the decks. I think card pool is a decent size, but Empire's going to come in and increase that card pool significantly. But it also is going to level the playing field even more so for new players because even with the veterans playing already, this is a new set, new characters, new warlords, new decks that are coming.
Exactly.
So it puts everybody back on that ground zero of learning.
Exactly.
Um,
There's like a
so
slight
yeah,
difference in understanding, but I feel like generally it's relatively the same, right? Like I'm not saying I'm gonna be able to beat like AJ. That's that's a challenge in itself. But like, for example, it's like I don't know, I feel like people that are like better than me, I feel like I might have a more fair chance since we're all learning how to play the decks all together and learning how to play against them.
well, I think people like Kevin are going to have an advantage coming into
Oh,
Empires, to be
100%.
honest. And the reason why I say that is because I think that the veterans are going to, like the people who've been playing for a year and a little more, are going to come into the game or come into this set and they're going to have, rose tinted glasses, right? They're going to come in with like, oh, I already know what I'm going to play. I'm looking at the spoilers. I understand the play lines. This is going to work into this deck I already have and stuff like that. They're not going to see things with a fresh set of eyes. They're going to see things with intricate play lines or structures or deck builds that they've already been used to, and now they just make some tweaks. Or I think new players like Kevin, are going to come in and see the game in a very new light in the fact that it's going to be fresh. And I think he's going to come across play lines or combos that experienced players who have been playing for a while are not going to see right away because they're already set in their ways, kind of thing,
Yeah.
Like I'm very excited to learn the new warlords. I feel some of them may be a tad frustrating, especially Malady. I feel like learning her is going to be very difficult. I'm having trouble building the deck, like in theory right now. I know that not everything is spoiled, but a vast majority of things are. So I'm trying to put pieces together, but it's difficult because so many good cards, and it's like I'm not even trying to like say that. It's just like there's so many good cards, and it's hard to narrow it down to like a consistent number for that deck, which is giving me a lot of problems, I'd say.
Well, and so that philosophy with deck building, I'm going to ask Kevin here as a new player. Obviously, in any game coming in, deck building can be a daunting task just because you're new to the game. There's so many cards to learn. There's just different interactions that you're not used to. So you're trying to learn how to play while also trying to learn how to build your deck. So where do you feel that you are with that? Is deck building just overwhelming, or is it a point where has the community helped you with that? Where do you feel? Are you feeling like it's
Well,
one of
for
those I'm going
me,
to learn, or yeah?
for me, I find it very intimidating building a deck.
Mhm.
And thank God for the community because I wouldn't even know where to start. Everyone has been amazingly helpful with building a deck, with suggesting cards, and it's been unbelievable and how great the community has been about this. Because for me, because I'm new to trading cards, I don't know what I'm doing, and
Mhm.
they're being so helpful when it comes to building and how to build it, what kind of cards to use, what's the best, like how many warriors, how many fortified, how many unified.
Well, exactly, and I feel like that's the most difficult part is each deck has very different ratios that they want, which can be very confusing at times. But I was once in that position where I had no idea how to build anything. So I spent a while learning how to like build each of the decks to a basic degree. And then I tried making just a base starter list, I think up to Frontiers. I think this was before the Veil Pierce cards were restricted. However, it's a good baseline for anyone who's wanting to start. Now, granted, some of them aren't the best, but some of them have done me very well. So I think that's a very good thing because I really wanted to help the community with that because deck building as someone who's went in blindly is can be
Yeah,
very difficult just because you kind of get overwhelmed by all the sheer amount of cards.
Well, like I
yes,
said, I think that happens a lot in other games too. We tried to make the game as streamlined as possible. Going back to that whole principle of design is having only three types of cards in your deck in terms of a warrior, a unified, or fortified.
Hmm.
Um, that's the at bare bones. It's not like you're having to have 16 to or even 10 different card types. You only have three, right? So now just juggling the ratios between those three uh, is where the nuances and the challenges come from. But I think just on a bare bones philosophy when we designed it is just to have those three card types was to try and make it as easy as we could and welcoming as we could for new players. And I think that's where the starter decks come in and give you a good baseline.
Exactly.
Um, they give you
yeah,
a good baseline for ratios and stuff, and then from there you can, as you get packs and boxes and cards, whether it be from opening them or from the community or whichever, is that you can, with the help of our great community that Kevin mentioned already, is swapping out one card for another, and then just understanding what you like to play and what you don't, and what your play lines and strategies are. And then there's different cards to be played based on the way you like to play the game.
yeah.
Exactly. I feel.
Which
Sorry, no, you gotta go ahead.
okay, so I was just gonna say because I just started building a heroes deck, and I've noticed from looking at the cards that there's multiple ways you can build your legion
Mm-hmm.
to suit your needs.
100%. Right now, the main two are Fandorian and Resistance. I don't want to get into that debate of which is better. It's very hot-headed, but I think they're both
But yeah,
Well,
very
like
good.
go for
right now
it.
my cards are primarily resistance, so I don't have many Fendorian yet, so I couldn't tell you.
Hey, fair enough.
Well, I think we're a good example of that is that I saw that it was yesterday or the day before, Kevin. You jumped in back in the Discord. You left a message in there for everybody asking that you picked up the hero deck and you wanted to try it out, and then you posted your deck list in there. And I
Yeah,
believe like late last night, Hunter jumped in and helped you, gave you some feedback on some cards and what you might be looking for, or what is good budget versions, what are good choices here or there. So going back to that whole aspect of the community, is that your favorite part of the game thus far? Is there
that
something
was
that sticks out more?
that was actually the biggest selling point to me is just how friendly and helpful everyone is. Like when I was looking, like trying to get into Magic, no one would help you. Whereas here, like I was just first time in the Discord, people were like, "Oh yeah, yeah, let us know. We'll come out and we'll show you how to play. Like we'll come to you if you want."
Mhm.
Like everyone was so helpful towards us. It really was a big selling point to the game for me getting into it because
Well,
everyone made me feel welcome. Everyone like I didn't people didn't make me feel like an idiot. People made me feel, like, hey, we'll show you, we'll help you get into it.
Well, exactly. I mean, I think that's the right way to teach someone because we were all once there, right? So like why shame other people for not getting into it at the same time we did? Like it's very much a thing. It's like, okay, I have my knowledge. I can pass that on to you and help you now. That's at least how I view things.
And I've played with 3 different people so far, and all 3 of them have been very patient and very helpful with me and had taught me a lot on how to play my deck.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I can't phrase it any other way. I think it's a buy-in mentality, and what I mean by that is like the community has bought into the concept of the whole aspect. Is we're a new game, we're a new community, but we only want to see good things. We only
Mm-hmm.
want to see growth. We only want to see more cards, more expansion, more players. We only want to see more cool events. Um, and I think that that buy-in mentality of, I don't have to spend a bunch of money. I can just come in and get the baseline stuff, and the community is there to help me with cards or ideas. Um, and even some of the veteran guys that have larger collections, they have no problem letting you borrow cards
Yeah.
or just giving you cards to use, or for you to keep. Right? It's that buy-in mentality that everyone wants to see it grow and succeed. So when you come into that, it's very welcoming, I feel, and kudos to the community. Like that has been, it's the thing I tried to start in the beginning, is the kindling for a good community. I tried to start in the beginning, but the community has really just taken it and ran with it, and has done an excellent job where it makes my job a lot easier introducing games to new players, if they want to learn directly from me or someone else. It makes it my job even easier in that regard of welcoming and opening the doors to new players, because our community is like, hey, I'll teach them, or like you just said, I'll come to you to teach you how to play.
Exactly.
um,
I remember
I
that we
got
were I remember a little bit ago Jake talked about 401 games and how having they might be having a learn to play night. And like I don't know, I feel like the community just celebrates like everything as a big win, you know? There's no negativity in this community, which I feel is just amazing.
Yeah,
well
it really is. It's hard to believe actually that an online community can be so helpful and welcoming.
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of, unfortunately, there's a lot of toxicity in the world, and what they call a lot of armchair warriors that'll stay behind a screen and attack people. But we haven't found that in our community. Like going through over all the people in our Discord server, I've never had to take any corrective action against anybody. um, you know there's always constructive criticism to be had, right? Like
Exactly.
we're still a company in its infancy. um, you know there's always constructive criticism to be had, and some people may look at it as, oh, this person's being negative, but they're really not. They're really just, they're either super passionate about the game and want to see it succeed, or they're just asking genuine questions, um,
Exactly.
to learn more, to understand the philosophy and principles. You know, I do my best to run the company the best way I see for the game to succeed, and the best way I see for the community to continue to grow. But I'm not without my mistakes. We saw that with some of the structure of jumping into crowdfunding for the first time, right? We thought we came out with a banger looking thing and awesome products and awesome things, and we honestly believe we still have that. But though maybe the structure and the layout was overwhelming for some, right?
Hmm.
um, we've always been here at Futureless Studios, always been that the presence is, you get one good first impression, so let's blow the doors off the thing, right? And that's one of our learning lessons that we've done so far, is sometimes less is more. right? And maybe being a little more, instead of trying to be explosion big fireworks, let's push the best of the best all the time. Sometimes taking a step back and looking at it from a different perspective. And that's I come to that same philosophy when it comes to card design. Do I want this big explosive power thing? No, because then that might cause ripples later on. So it's just, all right, let's take a look at it with a different frame of mind, another set of glasses, basically, and really go into the minutia of how this is going to affect the big picture, right?
Exactly. And speaking of, the new Kickstarter is releasing fairly soon, correct?
Yes, March 6th. We're going live March 6th. I know right now we are sitting on our page. I think it's like 59 followers as of the time of recording this right now. And that landing page has only been up for a few days, so that's really good to see. The community once again is showing out and coming to support. So yeah, we rejigged it. We got a new, a smaller funding goal, more streamlined. We went with a whole different feel this time around. Last time we really dove into the steampunk mentality of last time with the rust and the ooze and the orc goblins coming up from the cavern, and that's what we went with the first time. But we understand that didn't necessarily appeal to everybody, or it ended up becoming, like I said, overwhelming. So
Mm-hmm.
we scaled it back. We rejigged some things. We redid the tiers, and with a smaller funding goal, and made it more streamlined, because ultimately it's about getting the cards to our awesome and growing community.
No, and I'm
And if
super excited. It's gonna be so
So am I.
nice.
I'm excited for the elves.
Mm-hmm. You're gonna
Yes.
play into the gambling?
I was going to say
Yes.
that Kevin is an elf player or an elf fan through and through. So
Yeah. I am totally excited for the elves. When I read about them on the spoilers, I was reading into them like, that is my style.
Time to roll some dice, see what happens.
Yep.
It sounds like a fun deck.
It really
So-
does.
So being an elf fan, Kevin, in other fantasy genres and stuff, what do you now? Typically, elves are associated. If you're looking at Lord of the Rings, or you're looking at Warhammer, you're looking at Magic. Elves are typically the wise ones, the ones that wield magic, the ones that are almost immortal, live for a very long time. Even in Magic, they're the ones that produce mana, and they ramp your deck faster, and or they're often looked at, if you look at Lord of the Rings, with like what Legolas and his people, and now they're archers and people that live in the forest and stuff. What do you think? How do you think that we took a different interpretation on elves this time around, and that they were basically in legions pushed to the edge of extinction, and the last surviving elves live either scattered amongst the realms, or they are secluded into one castle floating on the edge of the world? And how now, with this new hero warlord coming, Angelica, the Rogue Princess of Blades, coming in, Empires on the Rise, new playable character for you. She takes a different approach to elves, is that she, for the longest time, has been hiding in the shadows. She jumps in and fights when she needs to, but everything is magic based and taking a chance. Very cloak and dagger rogue style. What do you feel about that?
Okay, so I come from old school Dungeons and Dragons, where back in the 80s and 90s, when it was
Okay.
advanced Dungeons and Dragons, not the Wizards of the Coast stuff. And I was in love with the Drow elves. And I find a lot of that kind of mixes into it, because a lot of the Drow elves, not all of them were all magic. A lot of them were rogues. And that's why I just love that.
No, exactly. I mean, I think I really like the classic kind of spin to it. I feel like taking something that's like super wise and making them kind of like sneaky and gambly. It's very fun. I feel like it's going to be a very interesting deck to play against.
Yeah.
Because you see a generous nature get flipped, you don't know what the effect is going to be until that dice is rolled. or you see something happen, you don't know. Like, you have to predict all outcomes because once
And
that dice is rolled, you can't stop the effect, which is
yeah,
so interesting to me.
Yeah, and with that, as like for a new player, but also people listening to the podcast now, right now, and you're learning about this, typically in competitive play, you don't usually in other games, you don't usually see dice roll mechanics or dice roll effects being very competitive because, like exactly like you're saying, Matt, you don't know the outcomes. So, not having that sense of certainty when you play your cards usually steers a lot of competitive players away from decks like that, because they want to know that when they play a card, it's guaranteed, everything counts, everything matters. So the trick in designing that was coming down to how were we going to make a deck that is inherently going to be fun because you're rolling dice, um, and it's going to have that potential to just high roll and have one of those aha moments, I got you on a game of chance, and really encapsulate that whole like fun of the Yahtzee kind of feel. But at the same time, how do you make that viewed in a competitive player's eyes as a deck that they can pilot or play in a tournament? And that's where we really tried to find a fine line, with that deck. So we have a lot of cards that have, a double roll effect, or Angelica herself being able to re-roll 2 dice, um, or we have effects that have, they're not just one and done. They have, if you roll 4 dice, there's 4 or 5 different outcomes. So
Exactly.
you're never just like, oh, you whiffed on a dice roll. There's always a potential that you can get an outcome that you want, right?
And I mean, I think the thing with that deck is going to be the versatility of like thinking, okay, which outcomes are okay, and then when you roll, let's say you, I don't know, I'm sticking with Angelica's generous nature because that's the one I know best. Where it's roll a 1, you hurt yourself for 10. Uh, 2, I think you search your deck for a unified or fortified, and then 3, you reveal a card and then draw it. 4, you search your discard pile for unified or fortified. 5, you reveal 2, draw 2, and then 6, you deal the enemy for 5. And I mean, I think the like, let's say you are trying to, I don't know, roll like something where you search your deck, but all the other outcomes are okay besides the one that hurts yourself. You got to think, okay, if I roll this, I'm okay with anything else but this. So on this, I re-roll. That's at least the way that my mind goes to it, and is very much
Exactly.
thinking like, which is okay, which ones, which do I want, which ones are okay, which ones do I need to re-roll.
And exactly, going off of what Kevin said too about those legacy like elves, the elves of old in D&D, is that it was, D&D, you roll dice. So Kevin's not, that's not a different realm for him. Um,
yeah,
and the concept of the rogue elf, the cloak and dagger, the assassin like thief or anything like that, is that you don't know what's going to happen when you step out of the shadows. You don't know if you're going to need to just all of a sudden bail and use a smoke bomb and disappear. And it's just like, it's kind of like having a utility belt of all of these different outcomes that can happen when you jump into the fight or when you jump out of the fight, or how you influence the game or the fight in itself. And that's what we really wanted to encapsulate in the rogue elves with the dice rolls.
also
Because
it's also more satisfying when everything goes your way.
exactly, yeah.
Like
I'm
getting a
so
proper combo off feels so good, but imagine when it's like entirely chance and it works. That would feel so good. I'm actually excited
Yeah,
for that.
yeah,
but
I'm
that's
waiting for.
just it.
I'm gonna say I'm waiting for that. Kevin's gonna show up at a bigger tournament and play against one of our top players and just, you know, roll perfect the entire game and just beat them.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
Kevin rummages around through his bag
Hey,
for the
I'm
dice that's gonna roll him a 4.
for the elves. That was a big. When I saw that, I'm like, oh, I want that.
Yeah, no, that'd be funny. I'm super excited. personally, I'm trying to learn Malady and Marisod. However, they're both a little more complex on the deck building, which is something I've realized because Marisod is dragons and sprites, so it's you have to figure out a healthy mix between the two of them, which is very confusing for me.
I do think coming out of Empires, that'll be the most complicated deck to build for most people when it comes to ratios, because having
Yeah,
to play two different types of cards in one deck. And what I mean for anyone listening, two different types of cards, like Matt was saying, half your deck is dragon and half your deck is sprite, but the sprites can turn into dragons. So you have to find the right ratio of how many of each type of card you're going to be playing, and then find the ratio of how many warriors, how many unifieds, how many fortifieds, based on how many dragons, how many sprites, and it adds a level of depth to the deck, as opposed to just to being a turnkey deck. That deck's going to be a lot of all the work for that deck is going to be done on your deck building table as opposed to in the game.
exactly. And I feel that's the exact same with Malady because Malady is just it's its own challenge, but like Marisod's very interesting because I feel like Lady Darksky is so powerful in that deck because at least from the way that I've been looking at it, I haven't found many ways to eradicate your own dragons, like to eradicate your own dragon warriors, or to like get them from the discard pile into the eradication. So it's going to be very interesting because Dark Sky is just constant fuel for the hatch.
Yes, and for those listening, Matt is diving right into the nuances of the deck. But to for those listening, um, Marisod is the new mythical beast warlord coming. Like I said, her deck is based on sprites and dragons, but she utilizes this new mechanic coming in the set too, that are these token cards that are crystal dragon eggs, and they have this hatch ability that when they are destroyed or leave the field by card effect, um, they create they bring a dragon from your eradication zone or your exile area and brings it into play, so that essentially you hatch the dragon egg. So when you have cards like as powerful like Lady Darksky, the Dust Dawn Dragon, it's already a card in the game that has the ability to destroy warrior cards on the field, um,
But then,
but also has the ability to just to eradicate itself to destroy another card. um, Doing that, coming in and it kills itself, eradicating it to blow up an egg hatches and brings back the dark sky. So it creates she builds her, she's a combo built in and of herself.
oh,
So
100%.
these are the kind of things that those little nuances that for new players like Kevin, right, those are you're going to see happen across the table from you, and you're going to be like, that's really cool, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
And I think I've seen, like, when you're playing your Titans, Kevin, already. I know you got a chance to sit down with AJ in your first ever like game in an event, and he walked you through how to play the deck, because Titans are one of his decks, and I definitely saw it when I went to play against you again later on, that you already learned from him, and he helped you with some card choices and stuff like that, and then on Thursday, you were able to pull off your first win, right?
Yeah.
There we go. That's
Well,
what
I
we
think
like to
that's the
hear.
thing. Is that was the one thing though, is that because they're so helpful and they explain, what it is you want to do with that legion and how it works better to like be successful with the legion. For example, you want to eradicate as much as possible to get the strength up.
Exactly. Right. You want to. I like Titans because they're. I actually haven't like fully played them, but I like them in theory because they pump up one dude really big and then just
Yeah.
explode the board. It's extremely fun.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, I saw that I did a demo with you, Kevin, with Undead, and it just so happens that the Undead starter deck is paired with the Titans, and I think you found obviously that you like the Titans even a little bit better than Undead. But I mean, you built both decks already, I believe,
Yeah.
and I think that's the joy of it, is the fact that we built each and every legion to have their specific way of playing, to try and encapsulate all the different types of play styles for new or experienced players. And so you really have an opportunity to build two or three different ways within a deck that, or within a legion that was already more customized to your play style.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
it once again, it's another way of adding depth as opposed to over complexity of, if you came into a game and there was 40 different characters to choose from, it's like entering and playing a fighting game with your kids and you're just like, I don't know which character to choose, right?
Yes.
So when we have it where it's like there's 8 legions, you can choose your legion based on your play style and then choose your character from inside of that. We find that when you, especially I think for new players coming in, that's my constant learning curve. That's what I'm trying to continue to keep in mind when designing new cards and new sets. What is going to be best for new players? Because that's how you grow, right? And
Yeah.
I think that coming in, and I always refer to it like an art class where you walk into a blank canvas or a blank sheet of paper. That's really intimidating. Or a writer, you will look at a blank screen and trying to write. How oftentimes you get writer's block because you don't really know where to start your story, or
Mhm.
you don't know what you want to draw. But if someone puts restrictions on you right from the beginning and says you can only draw within this box, or your drawing has to have these 4 or 5 elements, or your story has to have these characters, when you give people a little bit of restriction within an open space, I find that creativity blossoms.
Oh, 100%. It's like it's a very interesting term called forced creativity, right? But even though it's not forced, but it's like for example, like old video games, right? Um like the old Banjo and Kazooie games. They were so small on like how much space they could have that what had to be done is the like cries of all the characters are just the exact same cry of Banjo, but it's all the like same different it's just different speeds and different pitches, so it's not actually taking up different memory. Like I think it's a very interesting way because it puts a little bit of restrictions, so then right, I feel some of that restriction being, hey, you can work within your legion and you can use the bounty realm, but then you can only have you have to have 50 to 60 cards. I feel that's like the perfect restrictions
Yeah.
because technically you could make a deck with no warriors. It may not function well, but you can do it, which I think
Yeah,
is the
exactly.
best part.
I think that that's what we did in the very beginning, right? By giving you a restriction of minimum 50, maximum 60, now you have a 10 card window to play in. So there's a lot more creativity there. You see a lot of decks, there's some decks that play at 60 cards. There's some that play right at 50 for consistency. But then there's some that mix in between and they find that, I need this card in the deck, so I'm fine going to 52 or to 55, right? And that's where right there off the beginning we give you that baseline restriction, and then we also right off the beginning give you a restriction of whatever warlord you choose in a legion, you have to play all cards of that color. So now you've taken a mass card pool that would normally be overwhelming for people, and you've cropped it down to, all right, you chose a color, you can only play cards of that color. So now you condense that card pool down, and then you can only have 50 to 60 cards. So now you condense that card pool down again to the point where now it's like, okay, now I can really start to pick and get my ratios for nuances. And um, I think that's where you're going to find success in deck building there, Kevin, is that, you know, you play in Prometheus and Titans, then immediately you go, okay, Prometheus uses the primordial cards. So then now let's pull all my Titan cards out of my binder or out of my collection, put them out on the table, and now pick all the primordial cards out of it,
Yeah.
because now all of those are all the cards that work with Prometheus. So now the what would appear as a daunting card pool is now much more accessible and easier to create, I feel.
Yeah. But it's just now it gets to the point where now you have to figure out, okay, what cards work better with what cards. So what
Yeah.
kind of like comboing your cards off is now the more complicated aspect.
Yeah, exactly. Now you've honed in your deck building, but now it's just like now you got to learn the play lines of the deck and which
Yeah.
cards work with which. Yeah. Now I know Matt. He's been someone who approached deck building in a much different way. Like he mentioned earlier in this podcast that he did. He went across jack of all trades and built a baseline for every deck, and that's where he found is a good starting point. Where there's a lot of other people that jump into the game and they're gonna pick one legion, they're gonna build that legion, they're gonna try and perfect that legion before they jump to anything else, right? It's people work in sections or in different ways, and that's where I think Legions has that opportunity to specialize the way you want. But I know Matt came in and set out all these deck lists, and then now I've noticed as the year has gone on, and that I've known him for that he's gone. He's really dove into play lines.
Mm-hmm.
He knows the baselines of the decks, and now it's just like, how do I streamline these? How do I get them the most efficient? And
Oh,
I think
exactly.
that shows the growth, because when he first came in, it was, I don't think Matt's ever been mad about losing in a game.
No,
I think it's
never.
a matter of like he takes everything with he takes it as a learning experience, right? And he sees someone pull off a play line that he didn't see before, and it's like, oh, maybe I should try that, but I have a different idea, a different take on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's been super beneficial to Matt's growth as a player. And I know that there's other people that have taken a similar route like that, and I can see that already with you, Kevin. Just in the early times of playing, is that you know um, right off the bat you were like, oh, let's try undead, and then you started building titans, and now I see you're working on a hero list, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it
Well,
it seems like you're expanding and you're wanting to just kind of soak it all in first before you start fine tuning things.
yeah, because I
100%.
built up my heroes deck. I got my undead deck and my legion, with my titan. Sorry. But watching other like when I've been playing against other people, like when I played against Jasper and he played the demons, I'm like, wow, that was unbelievable the way he played them. But I
Mm-hmm.
also learned a lot from playing them, and I also learned where I made mistakes when I should have played cards and I didn't play them.
I feel playing against demons and playing against angels at the hardest learning curve because you have to let's say even if I was playing Titans, a deck that's super fast against demons, you kind of have to you're kind of forced to slow down so much, and it can be kind of frustrating, but
Well,
not in
I
like
think
a bad
that's
way. It's just a different learning curve.
Yeah,
I think that's where that tempo comes in, right? Is that you as you more you learn your deck, the more fluent you are. The less you have to read the cards, the more you recognize them by the images, and the more you understand the play lines of them. And that just comes with experience in piloting the decks. But then when you go against an opponent that is also very skilled with their deck, but then that's when tempo comes in, right? Where it's not just as necessarily you're playing against a deck, you're playing against the player now. And it's there's some players that come into the game and they play the game and they want to play really fast. Pat is a great example of that. He wants to play the deck extremely fast.
Mhm.
Matt likes to play his decks extremely fast, right? Where AJ plays his deck slower and more calculated, right? And so that's where, depending on the player you're playing now, that's it's not just, and I think that's where we really wanted to encapsulate it and try and show new players that it's not just the cards versus the cards on the table. It becomes a mental strategy of a player versus a player. And I think that coming out of the COVID lockdowns over the past couple of years, where everyone was so distant and everyone was so in the online space and there wasn't a lot of in-person interaction, I think coming back to game stores now and playing with your friends and family at the kitchen table or anything is that human interaction that not only do we need it and crave it as humans, but I think games are a great way to encapsulate that, because you have the opportunity to strategize
Mhm.
and think of things that you didn't think of before, and critical thinking, great for young developing minds, but also great for people later in life as well, because it's like, where do you get to experience that um, in the the mundane march of life, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we all play games to escape reality and have fun, right? So it's just like, how do you really make that experience the best? And I think it comes back to growing the player base and new players. Like, how do you make the creativity process, the deck building process, how do you make that that interaction and that strategic critical thinking the best you can, and as streamlined as you can to welcome new players in and really get people hooked and escape the reality of everyday life, right?
100%. I
And
mean,
I find the best hook is the community, because they are so helpful. When that's, I think, was such a big seller of the game, is that the community is so it was absolutely wonderful.
I think it's that we all collectively share such a passion for this game that when someone takes interest in it, we kind of like give interest, like want to help them so then they can, I don't know, because we as the community that has like played this game for a while, we know that the game is great, but it's like we want to make sure that these people have a positive experience with the game because, right, Taylor said it earlier, like your first impression is the most important thing in like anything.
Yeah.
So as a new player, Kevin, I have to ask, um, what is I know you said the community has been super welcoming and super helpful. For coming in, that's in person as well as online, but for players that are coming in or wanting to pick up the game through the Kickstarter to try it out, or through our stores that carry it, or our online store where you can buy some Legion's product and stuff, where do you feel that that there's an easy entry point for players? Do you feel like there's that picking something up like this and having direct access to the community, do you feel that it can help growth in areas, or is there something that we need to work on? What do you feel?
Well, actually, I think what you've done is absolutely wonderful. The fact that you can buy a battle deck. It's a very affordable, and you get two decks with it, plus two booster packs. You can, right out of the box, compete. You don't have
Exactly.
to spend a fortune of money like other games, just to be able to be somewhat competitive.
Exactly. And like it does come down to that point where it's like obviously there are like, the more uh staple cards like Void Hollow and Twilight, but I don't feel those are necessary at all, right? Like I've done relatively well in a few of the tournaments and I like at that time, like I still at this time I only had a Void Hollow. Like but I mean I think that's gonna become a lot easier to get those staples, especially with the Kickstarter as well.
But as a new player, you don't want to have to try a game out and have to spend a fortune just to be
Oh,
able
just to
to
try it,
be
exactly.
yeah, to try and be somewhat competitive. I'm not talking about winning tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just being like somewhat competitive. Whereas with other games, you have to go and spend a fortune just to
Exactly.
be able to be somewhat competitive, and so that's really off-putting as a new player to TCGs.
Oh no, 100%. Like I entirely feel you, right? I was what was it? Back when I first started playing, I was playing Undead, and I started doing like pretty decent with pretty much the bare bones, right? Like you don't need to have all these like I don't know, super expensive things just to have a decently competitive deck.
Yeah,
And I think that's just one of the many brilliant things about this.
and as a new player, that's what you want. You want to be able to get into a game and not be wiped out in the first two rounds.
Oh, 100%.
Because
Or
if you're being destroyed within the first couple rounds, then like, that's really off-putting. It's like, well, what's the sense of playing?
yeah, or in another side of it too, Kevin, I agree with you, is that coming in and not necessarily being wiped out in the first two rounds of play, but your wallet being wiped out when you come in.
Yeah.
You know, like that's the challenge in, I think, in the TCG world as a whole, right? You see a lot of new games that have popped up over the past 2-3 years, and you see a bunch of people jump in, whether it's for the collectability or the investability, or they want to flip the cards, or they want to just try it out and play in their communities. But a lot of times it's trying to figure out that balance, because you're in a position where everyone's new. There's so many new things because there's a new game. Everyone's new coming in, and inherently, because of rarity ratios on cards, some cards are going to be more expensive than others because they're harder to find. There's scarcity. There's you trying to track them down, right? But I think a common misconception for people coming from other games or coming from that sphere of new games and that rush that we've had in the past couple of years, when they look at Legions, they see our Exalted and our Renowned cards, and they just immediately think, well, because they're high rarity, it means that they must be really, really good, and therefore they're going to have a higher price tag. And then now you created a paywall for players. But I know Matt can attest to this 100%, is that the majority of the most powerful cards in Legions are the common and uncommons.
1000%.
And I can't stress that enough, at how game-changing common and uncommon cards are in this game, and how much they impact the competitive scene. And just not even necessarily to being super competitive, just having fun in general with the common and uncommons. So many other games, they just look at those two slots of rarities and just toss them aside. Yes, we have to have foils. Yes, we have to have chase cards in the game. But there are many foils and chase cards that don't even see any competitive play. Right?
Like, I feel personally, like, an example is Vault of Souls, right? I like the card. It's just, I feel like it's more difficult to pull off, right? And it's just some of those things, right? Like, some of them definitely see play, right? Like Baby Doom sees play in almost every undead deck. Is he better than Prince? I don't believe so, right? I've lost more games with Baby Doom than I have won, and I feel like that's the most important thing. Is, sure, it's nice to have them, but they're not required at all.
And that's the thing. I think that that is a great aspect for new players coming in, right? Because immediately you see the foil chase cards, and you think because somebody has the foil cards that they're just going to dominate you, or they have the quintessential best cards in the game, but really they don't, right? And not to downplay our collectability and desirability of foils, because yes, obviously there can be essential pieces at any level of rarity, but we mainly built the game where your quintessential cards, the ones that are going to keep you competitive in the game, are found at the lower rarity, to make it conducive for new players to jump in and explore and play the game at its core. So you can play it at 90-95% without having to have a single high rarity chase card in your deck. How do you feel about that, Kevin?
My audio is really messed up right now.
So Matt, what do you feel as though? Do you think that is something that works well for you, or?
Sorry, can you repeat it?
I was just saying, is that? Oh, sorry. Go for it.
My audio is completely messed up.
Is it?
Yeah, mine was messed up for a sec. I didn't hear like what the original question was that works well.
Sometimes we get technical difficulties. I can hear you guys both well, but
okay.
Yeah, it was just saying that when you come into as a new player, coming in and knowing that you don't have to track down these big chase cards, that it adds to the easy and the affordability of the game and the ease of getting into it, without it feeling like it's going to crush a pocketbook, as well as
it's refreshing. Very refreshing.
Yeah.
Going in, seeing, hey, there's a couple good things here for a few dollars. I'd think, wow, that's perfect. And I was running. What was it? I wasn't even running any like for my first few major tournaments. Like I wasn't even running any exalteds or any renowns. I just like was just running undead, and then I ran angels, but I borrowed the exalted. Like a lot of the communities going to be able to like lend you stuff. So it's if you can't track it down but you need it for like a specific event, they're super like they're super acknowledging of that. So I think it works perfectly.
Well, I think with that, Matt, I know that Kevin's having some audio issues there. Technical difficulties happen out of our control. So I think we're coming to a close for this episode of Legion's Lounge. But I have to say that having you on board, Kevin, and bringing you into the community, I know you also brought in. I mean, your children are coming in and playing as well. I think that's excellent. The community didn't just grow by one; it grew by three. Having more local players, seeing it thrive and be welcoming, and just seeing your positive feedback. It goes to show that what the mission statement I tried to set out for the game originally and what the community's been able to do. And you're reciprocating your feedback back about that and how great it's been and how welcoming it's been. That's it's reassuring going forward that we're on the right path, we're doing the right stuff, and the game is going in the right direction. So
yeah, they have been really enjoying the game.
and that's awesome. I see like some when they're opening packs and there's laughs being had and they're like, oh, this card looks really cool. I know that overall your kids really enjoyed the artwork of the game, and I think that there's always the different aspects of visual appeal for the game, but also just like you said, in many ways, affordability, the community. We try and check all the boxes, right? But hearing your guys' feedback, both you yourself and your children, hearing their feedback, it goes to show that we're proud of where we are and how far we've come, and it's just that positive reinforcement that you're like, hey, we're doing what we set out to do, and we appreciate you guys so much being in the community. Welcome to the Legion's community. Welcome to this awesome growing dream of ours, and I can't thank you enough for being here and being along the ride with us.
Well, it's been great. It's also been great that the community has been so helpful and so welcoming and everything.
100%.
So with that, I think, like I said, Kickstarter's coming out very shortly, March 6th. We're going live with it. We're taking everything that we learned from the first one, applying it to this one. We're only human, and we consistently grow and move forward like we do with the community. And we always get these great people like Kevin that jump in and learn with us, grow with us, and really help make the game what it is. And we hope you do the same when you hit that notify button to sign up to get notified for Kickstarter when it goes live. Check it out and get into this game, and let's grow together. Let's make this dream more reality. Matt, where can people find us if they haven't found us or any of our older podcasts or any of our ones in the future?
So you can find this and all past and future episodes on Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Overcast, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Castbox, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, and Stitcher. Basically anywhere where there's like an audio kind of platform, we're there.
Well, and that's great. If you are already following along with us, make sure you tune in and listen every Monday, outside of holiday Mondays like we had in the last one. But the Legion's Lounge is always welcome to, and I appreciate your time listening, whether it's on the commute to work, whether it's on the drive back from work, whether you're cleaning the house, out doing stuff. I know we've had Andrew's been absent for the past few episodes, but we did get confirmation now as his life is settling down. He will be coming back to the Legion's Lounge. I don't believe it'll be this episode or the next one, but it'll be in the near future. Andrew will be rejoining the Legion's Lounge team, so it'll be great to have him back. We'll probably just do an episode with him, just to see where he's been, how things are going, and everything like that. But in the meantime, we appreciate everything you've done for us so far, Kevin. Jumping in, being part of the community, and having that grassroots growth like we did with Jake, and having you along the ride. Community growth is number one, because without you guys, we don't exist. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
And with that, have a good rest of your day.
Have a good day, guys. See you next Monday.